humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. We are up to episode 90. It's very exciting. I've been doing these episodes twice a week. That may not happen all throughout. I may go back to once a week. It's a lot of work, and I'm trying to keep up, but I may fail you and have to go back to once a week. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to try and truck through, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, this episode 90. Oh, wait, before I get to that, I want to remind everyone from last week's episode with Barbara Corrales, who wrote Urban Tantra, Sacred Sex for the 21st Century. Her second edition is available now, and I have a book to give away of Urban Tantra. So if you're interested in winning that book, please email Susan at heyhumanpodcast.com. Put the word book in the subject line and you'll be entered to win. And I will draw the name randomly out of all the names entered, and somebody will win a copy of the book. Okay, so episode 90. I was in New York and she was in Johannesburg, and her name is Elisa Iannacone. She's a filmmaker, a journalist, and a photojournalist. She has traversed the globe producing works for National Geographic, BBC World News, Vice, Think Africa Press, etc., etc. She is also a survivor of sexual assault. She was raped by a family member in Mexico, her home country. And while she was going through therapy, she did art therapy and discovered the healing process of the art therapy, and it gave her an idea for this book. It's called The Spiral of Containment, Rape's Aftermath. Penworks Media is the publisher, and she brought together 24 survivors who've all suffered sexual violence, and what she did was she interviewed them about their story and took photographs that imagined how they were feeling, conceptualized their feeling after or during or both, and she chose to do this in the color of the spectrum wheel. So it's 24 colors representing each color represents one of the people, and she herself is represented in black and white. She put them all together in this book, and I've seen a few of the images. They're beautiful. And along with the images are then the stories that the people have about their experience, or how they feel now or how they felt then. And no names, just color. So green, blue, red, that kind of thing. And it launches on February 20th, which is the World Day of Social Justice. And on International Women's Day, which is March 8th, there will be an exhibition of these images at the Oxo Tower in London, and that exhibition will run from March 8th through March 11th. So for those of you in London, I encourage you to go see this exhibition of her work. I spoke with her publisher, and there is a pre-order link for Penworks Media. It's on heyhumanpodcast.com is a link to it. Make life easy for you. You can go straight to that website. Also, he said to mention that anyone attending the exhibition in London, they can not have to worry about shipping and handling costs if they buy the book at the exhibition. It's a mixture of a heavy topic and a beautiful topic, because something ugly is being turned into this work of therapeutic art. 500,000 adults are sexually assaulted in Wales and the UK every year. That is an insane statistic, but it is a real statistic. And Elisa includes men and women. I believe there's one male in the project. The rest are female. And it's, again, I've seen some of the images. It's very powerful. I'm never sure how to segue into the usual stuff after a topic like that, but follow me on the social medias, and you can find me, Hey Human Podcast, all over the place on the social media. Again, you can always email me, Susan at heyhumanpodcast.com, and if you would like to support Hey Human Podcast, you can do so by shopping at Amazon through the portal on the Hey Human Podcast website. If you go there, homepage, up at the top is the portal. You click on that, shop at Amazon as normal, and a little bit of your purchase goes to support Hey Human. It doesn't cost anything different for you. It just does that little kind of extra kickbacking thing, affiliate thing. That's the technical jargon, the affiliate thing. I suppose it's a heavy topic, obviously. I don't suppose that. I know that. But these are conversations that have to be had. And in doing so, shining the light, perhaps it will create a world in which these things happen less and less. Let's hope so. If you are a victim of sexual assault, there are certainly phone numbers that you can call. In the United States, it's 1-800-656-4673. And in the UK, it's 0808-802-9999. And I'll put those phone numbers and websites available on the links page on heyhumanpodcast.com. I just want to say rape, sexual assault on any level, this is an everybody problem. And if you're a man, a woman, a child, an old person, the color of your skin, not the religion you come from, raised up in, whatever. This is a global problem. And we are part of the solution. By listening, by believing, by helping, we can help, Okay. Here we go, everybody. Hello, Elisa Iannacone. Welcome to Hey Human. Do you live in London? Is that your home?
No, I'm originally from Mexico, but I left about 12 years ago and have just been living in different countries since. So I don't really have much of a base, really.
Yeah. You are a cinematographer and a photographer.
That is correct.
And what is your specialty with the cinematography? I watched some of your videos online, and it looks like you go into some pretty interesting places to document.
I would say that I've just always been interested in social justice and human rights issues. Even though I wouldn't consider myself to be like a conflict reporter or anything like that, I am interested in certain stories in those environments. So I did work in the Middle East for a period and have covered a lot of countries in Africa and obviously Mexico. So it changed. I guess my forte is really just cameras, and sometimes that means documentary filmmaking, sometimes it means photojournalism, and sometimes it means stuff like Spiral.
Yeah. Before we get into your book, which is extraordinary, so how long have you been in the cinematography world? And I imagine you've gone into some pretty intense scenarios for that.
Yeah. Sometimes I have.
Yeah.
I've been to not really have many issues while working in those environments, but I've had a chance to see some pretty interesting moments in history, I guess.
Yeah, I bet. It's exciting work. I'm gonna actually shut this curtain. I don't know if that's gonna make the sound better, but the apartment I rented in New York is on a very busy street, so I'm just afraid it's gonna pick up on the sound. Yeah, such a great city. I love it here. I do. I love it. So, let's... Oh gosh, you what? What'd you say?
If you heard honk, it was actually down here.
Oh, really? Are you on a busy street too?
Yeah.
So we were connected through Jody Medlin of Penworks Media, and he is your publisher for this book. So the Spiral of Containment. Let's just start maybe before that book became a thing. What brought you to that book?
Right. So I was raped in 2011 by a family member in Mexico, and really my career just completely shattered. So all of the stuff I was doing, I kind of put on hold. I just started a film company with a colleague and one of my best friends, and we were shooting a documentary in Mexico together with another colleague, and that just completely stalled everything. I never finished the film. I dropped the company and just started selling tickets for the Toronto Film Festival in a basement office because it was the only thing I could do and I needed money. So it did feel like a huge detour and in many ways a waste of time and waste of life and just emotions all over the place. Luckily, because I went to Canada at the time, I got assistance from the government and got access to an art therapy program with the YWCA Breakthrough, that's what it was called. And it's the first time that I had a chance to express my emotions through art. And I discovered that it just really worked for me. It was easier to sometimes create something visual as opposed to communicate it with words. So that was the beginning of me envisioning this notion of having had wings and going places, but them having been broken, essentially. And I just had this image really stuck in my mind, and I saw it for years, really. And it wasn't until I moved to the UK to do my master's degree that this idea just was really going around, and I decided to say, okay, well, why don't I reach out to some other people that have been assaulted and bring them over to my kitchen? Let's just have some collaging or some kind of arts expression thing together. And in the end, when I started speaking to people, they're like, well, I don't see broken wings. I just assumed in a way that everybody felt like they had wings that had been broken, but they were like, no, actually, I see a red car and I see a plane and I was like, well, tell me more. And then little by little, it became quite obvious that everybody had something that had been, I call it spiraling, just because it had been going round and round and round without end for, however long. And I just figured, well, I've got the skills to kind of translate that into visual, so why don't I make it into a project and do my own picture as well? So that was really the way that it began.
So when you were still in Mexico when the assault happened, and as a family member, I read in some of your bio work that you filed a police report, but the family actually threatened you and tried to squelch you talking. I imagine that sense of helplessness also fueled your, as you called it, spiral, too.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I feel like the aftermath of the assault was actually perhaps more damaging in a way, because what happened in itself, because it happened with someone that I considered to be an older brother my whole life, was really emotionally shattering and just took a lot of work to come to terms with. But the loss of the extended family, which I had been so close to my whole life, my godparents in Mexico, you grow up in a very religious way. Not that I am now, but at the time, your godparents are like your second family, and I grew up as an only child, so these people are like my siblings, and so the fact that I started losing them without them even really reaching out to me, they literally just started deleting me off Facebook. And then my parents started getting threats saying, well, you have to tell her not to say this anymore and be quiet, because apparently rape is quite, as much as it sucks to say, it's like quite a common thing in the family. Like, it's happened to a lot of women in the family. I don't know about men, but so the more I heard about this, every so often I'd get a Facebook message from some distant cousin being like, oh, don't worry, this happened to me too with our uncle, or this happened to me too when I was 8 or something. And I just started thinking, why didn't nobody say anything? Like, how is this something that we should just be quiet about and be okay with? So I started actually getting really angry.
That's good. That's a good reaction, I think.
Yeah, once I really, I did feel for quite a long period of time like I was drowning of, just pain. It was like, God, these people, they're like, your family, and you're supposed to be everything. You die for your family, kind of thing. And they literally just shut the door quite flatly. So that hurt very, very much. But once I started to process that and come out of that kind of shock, I realized how completely messed up this was, and how desperately somebody needed to say something, and how much I didn't want to be a member of this club of silence, which it felt like I was being asked to be a part of. So I just decided to just go ahead with the project and see what happens.
So you were in London at the time when you were deciding to do this, when you were doing the art there, or no, you were in Canada. You were in.
It's in Canada.
Well, because the reason why I asked that is because. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I I should say I did the art therapy in Toronto, and just as I was finishing different kinds of therapy, I moved to the UK to do my master's. So it was all kind of
Okay.
like together.
Did that inform your master's degree? Your experience? Did it change how you went? I mean, everything informs it, I suppose. But the reason I ask is because as you moved into this project, some of the research it referred a lot to sexual assault in the UK and Wales, and there was a statistic on your video that said 500,000 people are sexually assaulted in Wales and the UK. That just blew my mind, and yet it didn't. And I don't know which is more sad, the fact that I was stunned or the fact that I wasn't really stunned. Once it sunk in, I was like, oh, yeah, that doesn't surprise me, I guess. And it says so much about our culture. Did that, so when you were back in the UK and you were getting into those statistics, was that have anything, not knowing what your master's was in?
No, it was actually international journalism with reporting. I always wanted to go, never saw a career out of it, but just wanted to have the skill to be able to do it whenever the projects I was interested in called for it.
Were you wanting to do that before?
Yes,
okay.
I was.
All right, so it wasn't like suddenly,
I'd already been accepted to it and ended up deferring for a year. In my mind, I was going to save more money for it so I didn't have to get as big a student loan, but it turned out that this happened. I ended up getting a large student loan nonetheless. But I was already interested in that. And funny enough, though, after the assault, I ended up getting a lot of work in the field of sexual violence. So one of the first documentaries that I started shooting in Canada right before going to my master's, after this had happened, was actually a short film on victims of sexual violence, I guess. And then in the Middle East, the first project that I went to shoot in Egypt was actually, again, on all of the rapes that had taken place in Tahrir Square. And so for some reason, the topic just started to follow me. I think I obviously must have been attracting it somehow. And at the beginning, I think it was very difficult to digest all of these stories, but then the more I heard it, it was like I was processing my own through other people as well. It kind of helped. I don't know how to explain it, but I actually think that going over the topic so much really helped me.
Well, yeah, and you also found a tribe in your own way, that I think we are always seeking the familiar because it feels like home, right? And so if you are so displaced by a traumatic event, from what I understand, it's you leave your body even. So to find other people that have gone through the same experience, you can maybe even bring each other back into your bodies through that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there is a lot of dissociation that it doesn't always happen, but it certainly happened to me throughout a period of the assault, and I think afterwards, you have like flashbacks, and you're dealing with trying to stay in the present, which is the whole principle of grounding yourself and finding the now and all this kind of therapeutic work that helps you get there. But I completely agree with you. I think that finding other people, but also finding the statistics, was incredibly helpful, because suddenly you realize it's not like you're one in a billion people and nobody understands. It's like, actually, when you go to a restaurant, there's plenty of people there that are sitting at the tables that have gone through the exact same thing. And suddenly you think, okay, how come I don't hear about this like every day? Like, how come I was unaware of this being such a massive problem until it happened to me? So I decided to just start this project to try and raise awareness, help other people tell their stories, but also deal with the word rape, which is in the title of my project. A lot of people said, oh, don't call it, the Spiral of Containment, rape's aftermath. Call it, the aftermath of sexual assault, or just an exploration of sexual violence. But I was like, no, actually, the statistics say that, so many, like millions of people have been raped. This is something that affects millions of people. I can't shy away from the name, and it's quite cool because now, obviously, with the media and the way that everything's going, I mean, it's become a very topical issue that didn't used to be that way a few years back. But it's, I'm glad that the kind of wave is coming, we hope.
Yeah. Did, through the work, which again, we will get to in a second to talk about the particulars of the book, but through all of that, did your abuser, have you confronted or talked to your abuser? Has he come forward and apologized? Is the family, or is that still, no?
I have not spoken to any of them since that day. That same day, he was looking for me all day, sending me messages. I left the house eventually, and it was my aunt and uncle's place, and I had a friend pick me up, and he was sending me messages. He was calling me, wanted to meet up, wanted to talk. He's like, please don't tell anyone until you and I talk first, kind of thing. And then eventually, I ended up at my grandma's, and he ended up buzzing on the doorbell. And it was raining, and he was shivering, and he was crying, and so I did let him in, which also was not a wise move when it comes to any kind of legal thing afterwards, but I did because, and he did at that point say, I'd never do this, you're like my younger sister, I would never do this to you, but if you need therapy, I'll pay for it. So it's a very confusing statement to make, so I was like, well, you would never do this, yet you already have. But if I need therapy, you're willing to pay for it. And then, he did say, I'm sorry, I'd never do this to you. But it was a very shallow thing. It wasn't until he found out that I had already told a couple friends and my mother that he started turning it around and just saying, how could you do this to me? Everything that I've built is going to collapse. He was about to get married in a few months. He was like, my fiance's going to find out. It's going to be a chaos. How could you do this to me? I was just like, how could I do this to you? How on earth did you want me to carry all of this by myself? You placed this onto me, and now you want me to just keep it in the family? What is wrong with you? So then I realized there was actually no interest in what had happened to me. It was just about him trying to keep up, whatever illusion he had in his mind. So it was heartbreaking. We did end things by saying that if anyone was ever going to reach out to anyone, it was going to be me reaching out to him, which to this day, I wish it hadn't been that way, because in reality, I never will reach out. Not that I can imagine. I don't see any reason why. And I do perhaps wish in my mind that one day I'd wake up and have a proper apology, because to this day, I have no idea why he would do that. I just don't understand why, and it really, really hurts. So I do feel I'm owed an apology.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Whether I get it or not, it's
Yeah. It sounds to me like he needs the therapy. So how?
I should have told the therapy that I did have to pay for. He did offer in the end, but I never took him up on it.
He did. The therapy you did do?
Saved me.
He offered to pay for the therapy you did do?
Well, no, that day that we did speak, he said, if you need therapy, I'll pay for it. And then I did need a lot of therapy. And, even though I got a lot of government programs in Canada for a period, I just had to pay for it. And God, therapy ain't cheap.
No, it certainly isn't, which is really unfortunate, because I'm one of those people that believe everyone needs therapy. Even the people that think they don't need it because their lives are perfect. It's still so nice to have somebody to talk to who is non-biased in your life. They can see things from a different perspective. It's very healthy and lovely. So how did you go about finding the participants for your book? So I want you to describe what it is, because I think it's important that I don't just, rehash the book. I want you to tell it through your own words. So talk about your decision process of how the book would come about and what it is and how it's represented.
So I started by reaching out to rape crisis centres in the UK once I made the decision to move forward with this project, and essentially just sent them an email with my contact details and said, if you could forward this to your clients, they can get in touch with me directly if it's something they're interested in. Some places said yes, some places said no. Luckily, places like Rape Crisis UK and Soulless Women's State and Against Violence and Abuse and different organizations did forward it. So I got a lot of responses. It was actually a little bit mind-blowing. So I could tell the moment they had forwarded my emails, my phone wouldn't stop beeping. It was actually quite intimidating the first time it happened because I had no idea there was going to be a response of that kind. You know, I was like, hey, I heard about this. I'm really interested. Hey, it happened to me too. I'd like to be a part of this. I was just like, oh my goodness, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to shoot everyone, as in photograph them, for the project. I was like, okay, awesome. And at that point, I had no idea how many people I was doing or what the outcome was going to be. So I just decided to meet with a few of them and see where we went with it. I also went to something called the Clear Lines Festival, where I met my first male survivor that was a part of the project, and he was doing a panel on male rape, because I very firmly believe that I'm not doing a project about women who are assaulted. I'm making a project about people who have been raped and sexually assaulted. So this is both genders, well, all genders really, and adults, children, all races. So I didn't want it to be just women. So once I got him on board, and then I started to get a little bit of diversity of ages and races as well, I was like, okay, we started talking, and then everybody seemed to be quite close to a color, which is funny because I always envisioned my broken wings kind of like, bare from behind, these bone wings and this kind of dark black environment, no color. But all these people had so many colors. Like, no, the car this guy was driving was red. Or, I dance ballet, so it's pink. Or, the dress I was wearing was blue. And suddenly I was like, okay, there are a lot of colors across the board here. What can I do with that? Then I got this weird idea that maybe it was possible to find a person for every color in the 24 color wheel, plus black and white, which would be me. And that seemed like a stretch, but I thought that would be really cool. Like, that would be a very cohesive way of bringing all the stories together, because at that point, everybody has such a different story. I had no idea how to relate them to each other. So the color thing seemed like a good target. I said, okay, 25 people. Let's see if we can do this. And God, there were many moments where I thought it was not going to happen because it's a difficult topic to deal with. I'm not a psychotherapist, obviously. I have been through lots of kinds of therapy, but obviously I'm not someone that can handle, complete breakdowns or all these kinds of things in a professional capacity. So obviously I was looking for people that I considered to be ready to tap into this, which could be quite triggering and bring flashbacks upon people if they weren't ready. So I had deep conversations with people. I did have a psychotherapist in Toronto who was an old friend help me kind of come up with some questions to try and assess how people might or might not be ready. So I had her advice and guidance as well. And then eventually I think got better at learning who was ready and who was not. I did have some moments along the way where people canceled the night before, or people started having a meltdown on set, which I think was going to be inevitable at one point or another. Luckily, it wasn't many. And then I had one person whom I actually shot, and after speaking to her, we both agreed that it wasn't the right thing for her to do. This is an elderly woman, and hadn't revealed this to almost anybody since she was 15 years old, and it just felt like a bit too confronting. So it was one of those projects where I was like, okay, I'm almost there, I've got everyone on there. I was like, oh man, no, I don't know if I can juggle it. Then it was like, what if the people don't fit into the right color? Can I alter that? Like, there's so many questions. And in the end, somehow everything fell into place in the craziest possible ways, but it was a real battle. Like, there were many moments where I felt I was going to quit and just not complete it because it became quite difficult. Emotionally, financially, just in every way, it was quite tough. But I'm glad it's complete now. We have all the colors and hopefully going to make the best out of it.
So the book, I wrote this down, February 20th is the World Day of Social Justice, and that's the day it will launch, which that's a nice correlation. And then
Yes,
Jody had
yeah.
mentioned that on 2 weeks later, March 8th, it'll be,
Oxo Tower.
and that's all the photography.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's funny because initially it started as, oh, I'm going to make an exhibition. And then I thought, well, technically you need a book for an exhibition, kind of. It would be a good idea. Then Jody and I came together somehow miraculously and went for it, which is great. So yeah, both the book and the exhibition are ordered in color order from red to red, cycling through all of the 24 colors of the wheel plus black and white. And in the book, you actually get a chance to listen to read all of the stories from the point of view of the survivor. So instead of calling them by name, I refer to them by color to respect people's anonymity. If anybody wanted to disclose their name, they did so in the interview, and I respected that as well. But otherwise, you'll see the picture that we construct together, and then you'll have in quotation marks essentially the full explanation of what that picture represents to the survivor. So in their words, at times they disclose everything that happened to them. At times they will not say a thing that happened to them, but how they were made to feel and what that picture means to them. So, and then it just has a brief introduction by myself about how we came to meet, or sometimes just narrating my own story through their own stories as well. So it's really just a collective voice, I think, of people that are raising awareness about rape and all the different facets of it: childhood sexual abuse, gang rape, assault by a stranger, by family members, friends, grandparents, and just trying to showcase how diverse this is and how there is no real target person to be raped. This happens to Olympic medal winners, like you'll see in the book. It happens to CEOs. It happens to children. It happens to parents, fathers, mothers. It's really anyone. It could be anyone. So that's the goal of the book, to kind of present that in that way, I guess.
Did your participants, did any of them have a catharsis through this? Did they come out the other side feeling more empowered, do you think?
Yeah, I think the kind of unanimous kind of note that I kept hearing back is that even though by no stretch of the imagination is this something that's going to heal someone, because I think that that's like a lifelong journey, I do think that it has kind of shifted emotions and I would say take people one step further in the healing process. So I think most people said that it helped reframe the way they looked at the assault. One person went as far as saying that they wanted to hang the picture on their dining room table, dining room area, I suppose, to be able to share it with people, and they were going to feel very proud to share it. And I think that's really great, because I think definitely the people I've worked with can talk about this image with a certain level of pride or a certain level of fulfillment, which makes me feel really good, but also lets me know that it has helped in some way in their own journey.
Does the Me Too movement surprise you that it started, or where are you around that?
I mean, it's one of those things where I just hope it continues, because if you look back a bit, we had the Jimmy Savile thing, we had the Bill Cosby thing, we have waves of information that come and go, and yeah, sure, then we got the Harvey Weinstein thing, which has the Me Too campaign, and now we have the Women's March and all that. So I think there's definitely a moment of awareness that is not going to go away too quickly. I just hope it just doesn't go away at all. Did it surprise me that it came at that particular moment? I don't think it surprised me. I wonder what triggered it, because I don't actually know what would have been the drop of water that tipped it over and said, okay, now is when all this information is going to come. I don't know what that was, that spark, but I'm glad that it happened. And I'm glad that it's happening now.
Yeah, I think that the tipping point may have been during the elections, when one of the candidates, referred to women in such a, I think that was the tipping point. I think when our leaders, when they feel that they have the freedom to speak in that regard, that that probably sent a sentient wave throughout the world, really.
Certainly. I mean, it's an interesting thing because politicians speaking about women in that fashion is certainly not new. And for example, here in South Africa, President Zuma has been accused of rape, and the victim had to flee South Africa. So, you know, but the fact that it was the most powerful country in the world, I think certainly, and also, I mean, I'm sorry, but coming straight after Obama, which, you know, whether you agree or disagree with his politics, I don't think anyone can disagree that he was a very respectful man of women, and his relationship with Michelle Obama was a testament to that. It was a stark contrast to go from that to Trump, who really, I have nothing positive to say about that man.
Right. Yes. I'm with you, sister. I don't, you know, it's, for me, as far as the politic of any politic, of any country, if you're a human being and you can hear people disrespect and disregard another human being's feelings to such a level and not feel that that is fundamentally wrong, it seems to me that that one, if one does not have empathy for the understanding of that, you know, if that it's maybe time for some self-reflection on how you view the world, you know, and how you view your fellow human being.
No, absolutely. Sorry, I'm just moving because I'm plugging in my computer.
No, you're fine.
I completely agree with what you've said, and I think that, I mean, there's no point really rehashing how shocking what he says is, but certainly it's disappointing for humanity as a people, you know.
Yeah, but you know what? The other thing is that I find fascinating is, as you were saying, there's these family secrets. There are these things that go on inside the family, and I've always stuck to the idea that we compartmentalize each other. We do it with our lovers, and I've said this on the podcast before, we do it with our lovers and our friends and, you know, our parents or whatever. Like, oh, that's, you know, drunk Uncle Bobby and he's racist, but, you know, he's really a great guy. He just has these racist, you know, like we put, oh, that's, you know, crazy Uncle Donald, you know, he's really handsy at dinner parties, but, you know, whatever. We just kind of, he gives money to charity for dogs, you know, or whatever it is. You know, we compartmentalize these people. And as you said, the tipping point for whatever it was, I think finally the ballast has shifted, you know, has churned the ship upwards, and the ship is going down, you know. Thank God, because silence is so damaging.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah, silence is so damaging. Yes. And to your point, when you spoke of the woman who has been carrying her what had happened to her since she was 15, and now she's an older woman, and the shame around that, and the distrust that it created, and, you know, the self-loathing that it likely created, like all these things that this woman had to carry with her for decade upon decade upon decade. How is that okay? How is that okay? It's not okay. And yet we live in a world, it's not just America, clearly. I mean, the statistics are overwhelming. Rape is used as a military tactic, and has been since the dawn of time. I mean, I could go on. It's very frustrating, and it's hard to find the right words because it's so overwhelming. And I'm glad that you were inclusive of not just women in your project, because I think there is even an extra level of secrecy on men who have been victimized, you know, and who are survivors of rape and sexual assault.
I think the taboo of male rape is much higher than it is on women.
Yes.
Because we have this, it goes, you know, to this old social construct of, you know, the sooner a man or a boy has sex, the is, of a man he is. If women want him, he is, looked at like he's amazing. And it's this idea that, if a woman rapes a man, which actually I have that case in my project, a lot of people are, well, lucky him, teaching him the ropes early on or whatever. If it's a man, then it's kind of like, okay, well, he must have been gay. Well, so what if he was? It's like, it's still rape.
Yeah.
And if he wasn't, it's like, oh, well, you don't really want to talk about that because that's not, like macho, strong. How could he not stop this man? I mean, obviously he's weak. I mean, God, as women, we have to deal with a lot. But at least it's possible, you go up to people and people believe that it's possible that you could have been raped. Whereas if a man says it, a lot of people still stare blankly at you thinking, wait, can a man even get raped? Like, is that even possible? So many people don't even think it's possible.
Right.
And it's like, God, if you have to battle even the possibility of this happening to you, now that's next level complications. I mean, and I'll never forget one of the things that the man in my project said. He said as a child, because it was childhood sexual abuse and then rape, was that whenever there was any kind of sexual violence awareness campaign, it was always a woman in a poster or a little girl in a poster. It was always people saying, oh, you got a daughter, did you buy a shotgun? It was never about boys. So he was left to assume that he was the only person in the world that this was actually happening to until he was in his 40s and he realized, actually, this wasn't normal, wasn't the only person. The fact that someone had to live 4 decades of their life thinking that way breaks my heart, because it's like, it's completely, well, to say it's unfair, but it just goes to say about what we have done as a society to not create awareness and not create a space where men actually can come forward and realize that they're not alone, they're not this weird creature, the only one that it's happening to in the world, and they're actually completely allowed to say this is happening. We need to respect that.
Yeah.
But we have such a long way to go.
We have a very long way to go. But the conversation starts it all. Being able to talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes.
In general, just sex, consensual sex is taboo still. And if you talk about it freely, or a trollop, or or a man whore, or a fuckboy, or whatever the words are that people put on it, there's still shame around that. Anytime a human being is in touch with their sensuality, their sexuality, they're vilified. Unless they're a pinup, and then that's like this other realm that is somehow sanctified to be okay, but behind closed doors they're still talked about. And then if you put that on top, like, oh, this person is now sexualized without their consent, that takes the taboo way out there, even further. And then they become, an island unto themselves. But the conversation of it, the more you say something, I think there's so much power in words.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, completely agreed. And I think that we need to use them wisely moving forward.
Yeah.
To actually make the situation better for people and more inclusive, rather than, have an amazing wave of Me Too hashtags and then land worse off than we were before.
Sure.
So you have to be really, really aware of the fact that we're trying to create a change, but no change of this scale comes quickly. And it takes effort, and it takes repetition, and it takes, a lot of people suffering in the interim period, really.
Yeah.
But I think we just need to carry on talking about it. It's the only way it's going to change.
Yeah, and also that allies are extraordinarily important too. That saying that they always say over the airport speaker, if you see something, say something. That is also true for each other as human beings. If you see someone who is hurting, say something. Whether you go up to them and say, how can I help you? Or talk to somebody if you're younger and you need to talk to an adult. But I would say talk to an adult outside the family, because you don't know what's going on inside a family. 100%. Yeah.
I had my own cousin is actually a part of my project. She's a younger cousin that reached out to me when I was in London to be a part of the I didn't think I'd be able to include her because I had no plans to go back to Mexico, but then my dad got sick and I went back and I did it. She actually didn't tell anyone for 9 months. For 9 months, she did not tell a single person that this had happened until she thought she was going to kill herself. She couldn't take it in and did speak up. And obviously, because it's my cousin, but she represents the story in so many other people that have had the same thing. And why? Because of judgments, because people won't understand it, they'll reject it. And also because if your rapist does not fit the mold that people think a rapist should look like, they're very likely not to believe you. And that's one thing that I think we need to shatter right from the get-go is, what does a rapist look like? Because in a Hollywood film, I'm sorry, but the reality is he looks like a tall black man in an alley. That's what we've been told by a Hollywood film, for a long period of time. Or some criminal that's escaped from prison has 10 tattoos on his face.
Right.
I mean, that's what a rapist looks like, right? If you tell someone, this drug addict that was drunk on an alley raped me, people are most likely to say, that is possible. I could believe that. If you're going to say, the CEO of that company that went to Cambridge, or whatever, is raped me, people are going to be like, no.
Right. Or my pastor, or my soccer coach, or my doctor, or, 100%. My father, or my grandfather, or my uncle, or, or my mother, or, yes, exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
It is just like for the survivors have every face, so do the perpetrators have every face. So I'm very glad that this is a book of images, because I think that's also important, that there is a stigma upon what, or not a stigma, but a cliche, I guess, on what rapists look like. There's also a cliche on what rape victims look like.
Yeah, and realistic posters on the back of the bus with women beaten up in a shelter doesn't really help the image, which is actually the reason I didn't want to do this project in that way. I think there's an idea, an image that comes to your mind when you hit violence victim, and I think it tends to be like a really, emotionally destroyed, almost curling up kind of person that they can't stand for themselves. There's this idea, and those people, they are as well. As I said, there's an Olympic medal winner in this book. She's one of the strongest people I think I've ever met. And, I think a lot of people that have gone through sexual violence are incredibly strong people because they've had to overcome something quite big and get their act together to carry on.
Yes.
So I think, the idea of they look like, or what we look like, can completely...
Oh, I missed that last part. The idea of what they look like.
Or what we look like. I think it's inaccurate.
Yeah. All right. We're so far away from each other in the world. I think that the signal gets wonky sometimes. So the Spiral of Containment, Rapes Aftermath, it launches again on the 20th. Right, of February. What happens next for you, or is it going to be a year of being on a book tour and getting the word out, or what's your plan for all of this?
Oh wow! You know what, Susan? I have absolutely no idea because the project has taken years. I have been 100% immersed in it. I quit my jobs, like all freelance gigs that I did. I quit entirely and have just been doing this for the last, I think, 7 months now. So all I want right now is to do the best book that I can, the best exhibition that I can, raise as much awareness as I can, and then after that, I have hope that the doors will continue to open in a direction that's probably unexpected right now.
I have a feeling the doors will blow open for you.
No, well, I fingers fingers crossed.
I mean, it's extraordinarily important work, obviously, and I think, again, the more we talk about this stuff, the more we see this stuff, we can no longer turn away. We have to turn toward.
I agree. And the thing, I think actually, people can turn away. They can choose to turn away, but I genuinely hope they choose not to. It's like the option to not look at what's happening right in front of your face is always going to be there. I mean, there are plenty of stories in the book of, moms being aware that the grandfather was assaulting their kids and doing nothing. We as humans have a huge capability to put, sunglasses on and say, nope, not getting involved.
Yeah.
But I really genuinely hope that we act cohesively as a society and realize that this is something that we can change, but it requires all of us to collectively agree to and decide that we want to make this world a better place. As cheesy as that might be, and perhaps we've heard it one too many times and everybody's too jaded about it, but I think, we can make this an easier ride for everyone. It's our right to do so and our responsibility to do so as well.
Amen to that, sister. Absolutely. Elisa, thank you so much for being on Hey Human. I really appreciate it. I know that your schedule is extraordinarily busy, so thank you.
No, likewise. Thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely.
And it's lovely to meet you.
You as well. I if I could, I would jump on a plane and come to the book launch. It's wonderful.
I would love that.
You never know. Life
yes,
is.
I want everything.
You never know what could happen. Thank you so much. Oh, before we go, you have websites and all that stuff, which I'll put links on Hey Human. But if you want to tell everyone how to find you.
Sure. I mean, I have a website which is just elisaiannacone.com. You can pronounce that. It's just spelled like the pronoun I, name Anna, cone is an ice cream cone, iannacone.com. And then, really, right now, if you go to the Oxo Tower Barge House website and just Google Spiral of Containment, they'll have all the information about the exhibition.
Yes.
And yeah, about it for now. At Spiral of Containment on Instagram, Facebook.
All right. Thank you so very much, and good luck with everything. And